Hello, and thank you so much, Debrief, for having me. First of all, seeing some of your past speakers, I don't know how worthy I am to be talking here, but I hope I do some justice to this talk. So, my name is Ria Verma, and I am a first generation litigation lawyer. I run a firm in Delhi with my partner Rajul Jain, and I have about 7 years of litigation experience behind me. And I practice primarily in the courts of Delhi and Gurgaon. The topic today that I'll be talking about is first generation litigation lawyers. Honestly, I was thinking about how to address it, and it's a very wide topic. There are a lot of facets to it, and by facets, I mean struggles. So the idea is that even first generation lawyers, they come from different backgrounds. Some of them do have a network and certain initial opportunities to start with. So my idea is to have a little more of a focused talk, and I would like to, in particular, like to reach out to those first generation lawyers who genuinely don't have a background in litigation or in this fraternity, who are coming from smaller towns and who just know that they want to do litigation, or who've just started litigation and are just struggling with certain basic questions in and trying to wrap their mind around how to go about litigation. What I plan to do is I plan to identify about 4 or 5 major challenges that a young litigation lawyer faces, a first generation lawyer faces, and hopefully give you some concrete advice and give some sort of direction and help you maneuver and navigate your way through litigation a little better. So that's the general talk that I'm going to have in the next 15 odd minutes. To start with, if you are a first generation lawyer, then you will have 4 or 5 big challenges. Number one, you won't have clients. Number two, you won't have the background or network. And more importantly, you don't have that borrowed sort of goodwill and reputation to get clients. Number three, I mean, logistically speaking, you don't have a chamber or an office space or a clerk. And realistically speaking, you don't even have that knowledge set or skill set to kind of start your practice. So if you are a first generation lawyer that I have profiled earlier, then you're essentially starting from scratch on all these fronts. And in my opinion, if you're doing litigation, then your sort of journey in litigation is judged from these 4 or 5 parameters only. More clients, better briefs, bigger office, more juniors, better clerk, etc. So let's start from scratch. And if you are starting with none of these in your pocket, then I suggest that you join a chamber as a junior. Now, my first advice to you if you're joining a chamber is do some amount of research on the chamber that you plan to join. I don't necessarily mean that it has to be a senior. There are enough competent junior lawyers too, but join a chamber and do some research. When I say research, I mean keep 2 3 things in mind before you're joining. Number one, see that the chamber has a wide practice range, that they're dealing with all kinds of proceedings, suits, original side, appeals, writs, criminal proceedings. So see that they have a wide practice range, because the training that you get to be in such a practice where you're just dealing with different laws, different statutes, different proceedings, that comes very handy when you actually go and start doing your own work. Number two, you can try to make sure that it's a filing office so that you get some of your drafting skills honed. Also, you have to keep in mind, and this is something that you bear in mind, throughout your journey of litigation, that your first chamber that you join also sets or gives you your first trappings to create your own network and goodwill. So you have to be mindful of that when you're working in that first chamber. And of course, I have to tell you that the pay in litigation in a chamber as a junior is pitiful. And if you are a student who's watching this, then I feel like I should give you some hard numbers here. Your starting salary will be about 10,000 rupees a month. In a year or two, you could go up to about 20, 25,000. And maybe a year or two after that, you reach about 35, 40,000. But that is where I'd like to cap it. And that's your pay scale that you're looking at. So there are very, very few chambers that will give you higher, better salaries than this. I'm just telling you the general market rate of getting a job as a junior. Now, if finances are very tight for you and this pay scale doesn't work, then don't join a chamber. It's better you join a firm. But if you can manage with this, then of course, start as a junior. Now, one of the ways, because the pay is so low, I always say that if when you go to your first job, you should always have a conversation with your senior that you get to do your own work on the side, because that's the only way that you will be able to augment your finances. So when you go for that first interview or talk, always have it as an ask on the table that I will be doing some amount of work of my own and filing of my own on the side. Of course, it's your responsibility that it doesn't interfere with the seniors' chamber work, but have that as a template when you start. So that is as far as probably your first steps are concerned. The next question that one is asked is, should you be specializing or not? Now, if I have to answer that, let me tell you what the ground reality is going to be. If you are a first generation lawyer and you have no background, then your sort of prospective client pool will be of 2 or 3 kinds that you will immediately have access to. There would be individuals, family members, and friends. That is one circle. Then you could have access to small business owners. And the reason I'm saying small business owners because many of them can't afford more senior lawyers. And number 3 would be probably pro bono work. Now, the one thing that all these have in common is that they are not looking for a specialization. Literally, somebody can come to you with a 138 case, to a domestic violence case, to a bail that someone needs. So you will be able to get your first set of clientele because of your general litigation experience. So just to give you an example, suppose there is a small business owner. You should be in a position to deal with an employee contractual dispute with his employee, to an MSME arbitration that he's facing, to a bail that one of his workers need. Now, if you are able to position yourself as that resource for that person that caters to his every legal need, that is what will give you your competitive advantage. And that is why that client will prefer you. I am again saying, for your first set of clientele, your competitive advantage will come from the general litigation experience you have. And of course, when it comes to specialization, because of your circumstances and because of your background, that will happen probably later. It takes a couple of years. It takes, working in that, doing more briefs, doing more cases. And, you will suddenly realize that you naturally have carving a niche for yourself. So specialization takes some time, but in your initial years, you should have a very sound general litigation sort of experience. So far as pro bono work is concerned, as a principle, you shouldn't do free work. Even if it is, you must always put some value to the work you do, no matter how little it is, because initially, of course, you can't quote the fees that others quote, but put some value as a matter of principle. Put some value to the work you do. Try not to do free work. But if you do have to do pro bono work, because invariably all lawyers end up doing pro bono work, I would say that use your pro bono work as a tool, or like use it to your advantage. Use it as a tool to enhance or augment your specialized sort of skill set. For example, if you have interest in criminal matters, then pick up pro bono work on the criminal side so that you get access to trials, so that you get access to maybe quashings of quashing of FIRs, etc. So I would say use your pro bono work to your advantage and be very strategic about what kind of pro bono work you're doing. Another thing that you can keep an eye out for is panel work. Now, there are municipal authority panels, there are PSU panels, there are companies that advertise for panel work for junior lawyers. So keep your eyes and ears open, apply to panels. It's extremely difficult to get onto a panel, but just stay at it. Panel work is good quality of work and quantity of work, and it can also help you boast about your specialization that you intend to do. So yeah, that's another avenue, and that's another sort of door that you can use to cater to clients. That's as far as clients is concerned. But one piece of advice that I'd like to give you is that you must really invest in the client you have. You must put your heart and soul into his case and getting him his relief, because trust me, if your client sees that you are an effective lawyer and you are getting him good relief, he will definitely recommend you to others. And that is your nascent steps towards creating your network and creating your sort of clients, getting clients. So don't take any client lightly. Put your heart and soul into it and go that extra mile and, you know, do that whatever you need to do to get him that relief. So that's the second piece of advice I want to give. And now the next question that usually one asks is about not having an office or a chamber or a clerk, to start off your practice. Yes, it would be great if you are in a position to open an office space or have a chamber. But in my opinion, don't get demotivated if you don't have a chamber or an office space. There are enough alternatives available that you can use. You can use barroom facilities, you can use court facilities, there are conference rooms that courts provide. If you're in the bigger cities, and I wish I had known about this earlier, but then there's a great co-working culture. So they provide an excellent alternative, the kind of infrastructure and resources that they provide for working space. Even cost-wise, it's much more cost-effective than setting up your own office. So you can explore that, but like I said, it shouldn't be a priority for you to get an office space before you start, your own practice. So far as, like I said, office and all is secondary. I always say, if you're getting your orders, if you're getting relief, then that is the most important. The rest of it you'll build up as and when your journey, sort of proceed. The next thing that one asks is about clerks. Now you see, clerk forms the backbone of your practice. But if you are starting out, you may not have the resources to get or hire a experienced clerk. The other option obviously is to get a junior clerk and then you train them. But you have to realize that you yourself don't have that sort of a knowledge set when it comes to the procedural aspect and filings that are there. So, in my opinion, in your initial years, especially in your initial months, it's important that you have some sort of an arrangement with experienced clerks in different courts that you plan to practice or have cases in, and have a one-on-one sort of engagement with an experienced clerk, so that you yourself get to learn what the procedures are. So if you're doing litigation, you have to be very soundly adept about the filing procedure, about how different courts work. For example, an armed forces tribunal works very differently from an NCLAT to Gurgaon District Court. And if you are doing cases in these courts, you have to know exactly how the registry in these courts works, how filing works, what the court dynamics, etc. are. And if you want to expedite that learning for yourself, then there is no better teacher or mentor than an experienced clerk. And I'm saying this from personal experience. You pick his brain, you try to extract as much as you can from experienced clerks, because the kind of knowledge and experience they have gained over the years on how courts work and how filing and procedures work is unparalleled. And only once you know it can you actually impart that knowledge to a junior clerk. So I would say your initial years and initial months, you must hone your filing and procedural knowledge, and you must use experienced clerk as an asset in this and try to learn as much as you can from them. And then of course you can gradually get yourself a clerk to a full-time basis. So that is so far as probably clerks are concerned. The next thing that I'd like to address is building your sort of knowledge set, and that is what I think gives you an edge over other lawyers. So you have to really make an effort to stay up to date with the latest sort of judicial pronouncements and the latest judicial trends. And for that, one of the things that you will need is an access to a good legal resources and database. So if somebody was to ask me, how would you like to prioritize your initial sort of expenses and investments when you start off litigation, your first and foremost priority should be to get yourself maybe a good legal database or software, and and some amount of a basic library going for you. It is really expensive, and like, trust me, setting up a library is expensive. Even the database, you may not be able to afford it in your initial months, so you can pool resources with your peers and try to get it, but that is something you will have to go out of your way for. The other thing about being a first generation lawyer is that you don't necessarily get the mentor that you want or you need. And if you do get a mentor, then you're extremely lucky. But if you don't, then it's okay. Like I said, there are alternatives. And enough is not said about this, but you must use your peers in case you don't think you have that sort of a mentor. Your peers are a great alternative for guidance, for helping you out with your cases and for any issues that you face, especially your seniors from college, etc. So use them, brainstorm with them, use them for guidance, even for your own sort of knowledge base and your uh, even for you to get a better understanding and insight into this profession. Stay up to date. I mean, stay up to date with them too. Don't hesitate to reach out to them. But like I said, you must make it a habit to read legal texts regularly, so that you are up to date with the latest, like I said, legal trends and pronouncements. Because trust me, you don't even realize it, but when your client comes to you for that ad hoc advice, or it's this sort of knowledge that you gain, which you don't get through your own sort of litigation practice and the own cases you do, but your general knowledge that you gain from reading legal text and use that actually helps you. That is so far as knowledge, etc. is concerned. And these were probably the 4 5 big challenges I think juniors face, because over the years, this is what I'm invariably asked these 4 5 common questions and doubts. So those are my 2 cents on how you can possibly maneuver your way through litigation. I also think that I should address another topic, another part of this, which I won't be doing justice to if I don't address, and that is the mental health aspect of litigation. Unfortunately, not enough is spoken about it. Unfortunately, our fraternity or our the legal community doesn't do enough to cater to mental health of lawyers, and especially younger lawyers. And that is something you have to be mindful about. I know a lot of lawyers who just are not able to sustain the kind of long haul and the longevity that initial years has because of the mental health sort of impact it has. And I mean, of course, everyone has their own personal journey, but 2 3 things that could help you with it. Number one, do not compare yourself to others. That's one. I mean, it's difficult not to, but actually try to, not compare yourself to others, because there's always someone who's going to be doing better than you, who's going to be doing more cases than you. And that kind of puts an unnecessary burden on you because you're already dealing with so much. So, my first advice is that don't compare yourself to others. You have to realize that your litigation journey is singular to you. What you bring to the table, what your skill set is, what your, even in court, what your power of persuasion is, it's singular to you. So your journey is singular to you. Don't try to reference it to others. Number two is set realistic expectations for yourself, both professionally and personally. So try to have milestones that are realistic, and don't try to burden yourself with these unrealistic expectations, because see, at the end of the day, you will sooner or later realize that you're just not meeting the milestone that your other peers are, who are in firms or who are not doing litigation, or especially independent litigation. So you will not be meeting those milestones, and that is something that you have to accept. And therefore, try to set your own realistic milestones and have blinkers on, and try to just focus on your journey and your what you can do best for your practice. And the third thing that I think could help in this is try to create a good support system for yourself, whether it's through your friends or your family or your peers, who you can reach out to, who you can communicate with, and who you just don't and of course don't hesitate to reach out if you are struggling. So my point is that be mindful that mental health is a huge struggle for young independent lawyers, and don't try to overestimate yourself. Stick to what you're doing, work hard in what you're doing, and like I said, you have to have a certain kind of a moral fortitude to stick with litigation. You have to have this kind of a conviction that this is what you want to do. And one of the reasons how you can sort of stay inspired is, even in the face of all these struggles, is somewhere be a little idealistic about why you're doing this. Why are you doing this? And you have to tell yourself that at the end of the day, you are passionate about how court craft is, how courts function. You want to have a small role to play in this entire judicial justice delivery system that we have in our country. So be a little idealistic so that you get your inspiration and you get your conviction from there, and have patience and work hard. I mean, like people say it's cliche that there's no substitute for hard work, but just stay at it. It's a very challenging, but it is a very rewarding profession. I say that, once you get that relief or you get that effective order, in that single moment, your entire struggle and your entire journey seems worth it. So, have your blinkers on and do what needs to be done. And I'm sure that, you will eventually get the reward you deserve. That's my 2 cents on first generation litigation lawyers. It My talk today was tailor made to, like I said, lawyers who genuinely don't have a background and who are just looking for some sort of guidance. And if you have any more questions, then please reach out and I'll try to address them. Thank you so much to Debrief for having me, and yeah, hope there's been some sort of value addition to all of you here. Thank you.